Okay, I want to start as close to on time as we can. So looks like a few more people are coming online or whatever it is, but we're going to start anyways. Hopefully they won't miss too much. Um, in general, I like to simplify things. That means that if I'm saying things that you already know, that means that you've been doing it right and I'm not saying anything wrong. So that's going to be good. We're going to go through things that's going to be kind of hopefully not too like rapid fire, but it is just going to be straight up basically halachas. We'll take questions as long as it's not doesn't get too distracting. There's no video screen here this time. We have a different setup. So there's nothing to follow along. I'm kind of be doing it from notes that I have compiled over time and worked on. But I try to keep it in order that it kind of like has some sort of semblance of of a system to it. So the first thing we'll begin with basically that already 30 days before every single Yom Tif in general, you're supposed to start being Data. She's supposed to start learning and the halachas, going over them. And this is even if people already know the halachas. Because what you're doing review, I guess you could say, is it kind of reminds you and gets you back into the zone of whatever Yom Tif it is that you're coming to. I think Shavuos, it's possible that we don't have this that concept, but for all the other holidays, from already before you already start to do that, and it helps you sort of get ready. So one of the things we do during this month, or the beginning at least, is we do what's called the Nasi. We say every single day the Nasi. I don't want to focus on this too much, but just because it's not really the topic, we're just sort of we're going to focus more on Pesach. But if you did forget to say the Nasi one day, then you definitely, first of all, you have the whole day to say it. You have also the whole night until Alisa Shachar, which is the next morning. And even then, you would still say it the next day. You just wouldn't say the extra Yehiratzin that you usually add, but you would still say it the next day as well. Another important thing to remember even now is the idea of Moischitim, which is that we already we as a community, there's a responsibility to help the people who can't afford different Yom Tif needs, that they should have the resources that they need. And that you should already basically give as soon as you could so that people can have the opportunity to go out and get what they need and not just, the last minute when it's already too late for them. So that's another important thing to kind of remember. Also, I guess I don't know how relevant it is to us because our system is a bit different. We sell the chametz, but in general, to kind of be more aware, I guess you could say, of where chametz is going and how much you're buying, and you shouldn't have it all, piled up like right before Pesach. Again, it's not as strict, I guess, for us because we kind of sell even real chametz, which is, a Chabad thing. Some others do it as well by now, but they didn't used to do that. So it used to be if you had real chametz, you'd be stuck with it, or it would go to waste, or you'd have to get rid of it somehow. But nowadays we kind of sell it. So unless it's like, even freezer stuff, you could put even bread into the freezer. So you don't have the same thing, but there is that idea. The nasi is, sorry, someone just asking online. The nasi is after davening. We say basically all the in these days leading up to Pesach is the time that they were leading up to starting the service in the Mishkan. So every single Shevet would bring another carbon on another day. So to commemorate that event, we do what's called a nasi. We say a particular part from the Torah of where they brought whatever their carbon was, and then we say that if we were part of that a part of that shevet, then it should all the merits of that should fall on us as well. It's important because if everyone knows, and we all celebrate today, especially that we didn't say Tachnun, right? So the whole month of Nisan, we don't say Tachnun. And part of that is because during these 12 days, for every single Shevet on that day, it was a big Yom Tif. So whichever Shevet was the one that was bringing the carbon, it was a big Yom Tif for them. So because of that, we have those 12 days. Plus we have the 8 days of Yom Tif. So you already have 20 days that's a Yom Tif for everyone. And Erev Yom Tif was another Yom Tif for everyone because they brought the carbon Pesach. So you already have so many days that you're not saying Tachnun, so we don't say Tachnun the whole month. So it's important to remember that this is the Nasi. This is the reason why we saved the 8 minutes today, right? Okay, so then another thing also has to do with the bracha that we make on a fruit tree that's budding. There's plenty of we could talk about that another time. Again, it's not the topic here, but it is important to remember during the month of Nisan, if you see a fruit tree that starts to bud, there's a special bracha that we do make on it. And if best is to do it the first time you see it. If you didn't, you can do it later on as well. There is something about if you could also say it the next month, if you could still say it even later, because a lot of people, they always know that, yeah, I have to do it, and then they never get around to it. Maybe here it's a bit different because you have trees, but in New York, it was always a challenge to find the tree. Someone told me that today as well. I don't remember seeing that. It could be, yeah. What, the bracha? Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. someone just mentioned that to me as well. I don't remember that it has to be two trees. It is possible. I didn't have a chance to look it up, and I didn't want to, but yeah. So
What was the
I don't know
question?
if you have to have two fruit trees next to each other to make the bracha. I don't know. We'll have to look it up later again because it's the second time I heard it today. It could be. I don't remember. I know in New York, they wouldn't really have too many fruit trees, so people would kind of like plant. They would plant their own little tree. Like there's like a few spaces where some building owners were kind enough to plant like little fruit trees, and there's only one. So I don't know. Maybe it's two buds on the tree. I'm not sure. We'll have to look it up later. Okay, so now let's go like this. Okay. So someone does say here it says preferably two trees. Okay, could be. Um, so so basically like this. When it comes to getting rid of chametz on Pesach, and I don't know how we'll see what we can do in the time that we have. So we approach this with a three-pronged attack, right? So the first thing is we basically get rid of the chametz, which is what we'll talk about the first part of today: cleaning, throwing it away, destroying it, all that stuff. That's going to be number one. Number two is what we do what's called bittul, is that we nullify it and we basically say that it's not important to us and it's worth nothing and it's hefker. That would be number two. And number three is we sell the chametz. So these are the three areas that we kind of attack the chametz and we make sure we don't have it. Bittul really is enough on its own, meaning if you nullify it and it's not yours, then really you're good to go. The problem is that bittul really depends on what you're thinking. It's a process that you have to come to on your own. So imagine in the middle of Pesach, all of a sudden you go into your closet and you see a Glenlivet that's older than you, right? And you say, "Oh no, I forgot to put this away," right? So what are you gonna say? "Oh, but it's hefker, it's all good," You might say that, but you might think for a second, "Ooh, I hope it's still here after Pesach." I hope it's still mine, basically. So in other words, that thought can undo the whole thing from the beginning. So therefore, we don't want that it should be just nullifying on its own, because that's going to leave you susceptible that you might end up, having regret at some point, and that can undo the whole thing. So instead, we say that number one, you should get rid of it as much as you can and destroy it. Then you also do the bittul, and then as another layer, you also do the sale. You sell it to a non-Jew, and this way, even if you look at it one day and you say, "Wow, this is a very wonderful bottle that I'm happy that's still in my house," but it doesn't matter because it doesn't belong to you; it belongs to the non-Jew. So those are going to be the three directions that we're going to go. So number one, let's focus on the first part of the idea of getting rid of the chametz and cleaning and making sure that it's not around. So the first thing is simply get rid of the chametz, right? So you want to focus number one on the places where the chametz really is. So sometimes you have that for the first, Purim, the good balabasta. I actually went to someone's house a couple years ago in Montreal. It was a little bit after Hanukkah, I think. Someone was sitting shiva, a friend of mine. So when I went to their house, I was on my way down. It was someone that we knew through relative, and on the way down to the basement, so the balabasta tells me, "Oh, no chametz downstairs." I said, "Chametz, it's Hanukkah. Who's thinking about chametz?" But they were already clean from already Hanukkah time, which is great. But the point is, if you put too much focus on the wrong places too early, then you're going to end up using your time and your energy in the wrong areas, and then you're going to end up with cramming in the areas that you're really supposed to be spending time. So again, ideal world, everyone has plenty of time, everyone has plenty of energy, plenty of resources, no problem. Do a full spring cleaning, air out your window curtains, whatever you want to do is going to be good. And that's great. And you should don't minimize anything. But we're going to try to go through, I guess you could say, like the priorities. The places where are the most, the ideal places that you should be spending time. If you have enough energy and you have enough resources and time and you have kids to help you or whatever it is, kids, they help you, but they also make more of the mess. So it's like it goes both ways. You have to clean more with kids, but then hopefully they're old enough to help you do some of the cleaning too. So number one would be that if it's a place that where you eat and you store food, essentially the kitchen, pantry, those types of places, obviously those need to be clean. There's always chametz there. They need to be clean very well. All the other places, where places where chametz may have came in at some point, so those should all be checked as well. Again, a little bit with less scrutiny, but also they, as much as you can, those should be checked as well. I guess you could say with a lower power magnifying glass, maybe for look only for bigger pieces of chametz. You don't have to scrape floors in your upstairs bedroom for chametz. You don't have to scrape the walls because it's unlikely that there's going to be something there. Things that are going to be used, things that are going to be used on Pesach, especially with food. So we're not going to, I don't think we're going to get to koshering today in general, but even though you do kosher, let's say countertops, tabletops, but because food will be put there, the minig has become that we cover it as well. I think the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention it in the Shulchan Aruch, but many other poskim do talk about this minig, that anything that you use throughout the year, and even though you kosher it, you still will cover it. So a countertop that you kosher, people still have the minig to cover it, and that's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing that you should do. If it was covered the whole year already, so then maybe you could, you don't have to be as a. But I remember I grew up, and it's a little bit of a Russian thing. I feel like that they would have fancy tables and they would cover it, so you would never see underneath the cover the whole year. It was always covered. And then they would cover it more when it came Pesach. So, to each their own, I guess you could say. Places where food is, like kitchens. So if you could, wipe down the walls, especially if you have kids, that's a good thing. You don't have to go crazy, but sometimes things do get stuck there, especially with little kids. So you have to know your house, you have to know your space. That's something that, you should be, I guess, aware of, depending on what's happening over there. Chairs and high chairs, so those definitely have to be cleaned and done well, I guess you could say, but you don't have to unscrew them and take them apart. That would be another level. You definitely don't have to do that. You don't have to take them apart. You clean them well, you get as far as you can. If you want to use a toothpick to get into a tight spot, I don't know that you have to, but it's definitely a good thing. But you do a good cleaning, and that usually would take care of that as well. High chairs obviously would be a little bit, I guess, the next level, because high chairs get pretty messy. Again, you have some nowadays, you have some pretty simple plastic, the modern, very smooth types of things. So if you have something like that, then, you take it as it is. A lot of people would change the table for the high chair, though. If you have a second one, so that's a good thing. If you could do that as well. People would kosher it. If it's plastic, you pour everything and you cover it. So you could do that as well. Porches and yards and outdoor spaces, so they should basically be, swept and cleaned. We'll talk, I guess, a little bit. Okay, so yeah, that you should do. If there's bigger pieces, then obviously you have to get rid of all the chametz. Smaller pieces, if it was there early enough, you could assume the birds got to it. But a lot of times, I think people, they assume, in halacha it mentions that you could throw things to the courtyard and you could rely that it's gone. But the Alter Rebbe seemingly or clearly says that if you throw like bigger pieces of chametz close enough to the zman, then that's fine. But you have to go back and make sure that the birds actually got it. So if you're going to throw some things to your own personal yard, especially this year, I guess it would be different because it's Shabbos, or Friday, but Shabbos. So if you do it, you're going to have a little challenge. You do want to make sure that it's gone, especially if they're bigger pieces. If you're going to use your garbage cans and bags and stuff like that from before till Pesach, so you definitely have to clean it and make sure there's nothing edible. Usually the garbage, at some point it's going to get spoiled and it won't be so edible, but you do have to make sure that there's nothing really there. Cars, if you're not going to use your car, so great. You lock it, put it away. You don't have to do anything. You sell it. You have to sell it, obviously. And then you don't have to worry about it. But cars definitely do get, they do get a lot of, use, especially if you have kids. Even without kids, sometimes you munch on stuff and you put it on the side. And then, before you know it, the window was open and it blew to the back of the car. So car, you definitely have to clean well. You don't have to remove the seats of the car. You have to clean it really well to wherever you can reach. Many people do remove the seats, and that's okay. I could tell you from the times that I've removed the seats, the times that I remove it is Erev Pesach to Erev Pesach to Erev Pesach. So if you're not going to remove it any other time, and you're not going to remove them during Pesach, then technically you don't have to remove them and get to places that you can't reach. Now, if you could, and you have koiches, and you're young and strong, or you have kids that are young and strong, so great, it's not a bad thing. But if not, you can just take a good vacuum cleaner, get to every single reachable space, and then that's fine as well for the car. Car seats, obviously, for those that use car seats, those are generally chametz attractor. So that's going to take special attention. Besides for vacuuming and cleaning it well, you obviously, if you can usually wash the seat as well. So you use if you can scrape the sides to make sure there's nothing there. So you could check sometimes when it goes through the wash and it comes out, you could still see it had like inside the seam. So as best as you can, turn it inside out, kind of shake it all out before, and then you put it through and you clean the rest of the car seats as well. Svarim or books. So there's always a lot of chatter about how it would work for Svarim and books. You have a lot of different opinions. You can go through it different ways. The ones that for sure have like benchers and stuff like that, don't even bother. Those should not be around. You put them away and they get sold. Things that then you have the other extreme. You have people that are very strict the whole year. They never use their svarim around food. So that's wonderful. And then really they don't have much to do. But most people, if you have your svarim around, then you try to be careful. But overall, you leave it at the table, and someone comes and maybe you had an extra cookie there, you were hungry, or you had something spilled there. So it is ideal to clean it. You wipe down the outside, flip through the pages, make sure there's nothing there. If you're not going to do it extremely well, or if you have some svarim that probably didn't have chametz, but you didn't actually check, so it seems like you can still use them, but you shouldn't use them by the table, and you should wash your hands after if you do use them as well. So it's not like you're not going to find the kazayis of chametz inside them, and you do sell them, and you are bought and you're mavatal them. So if it's one that you use, let's say you have a chavrusa every day, you're going through Shas, or you have a Shulchan Aruch, or whatever, or Sefer Maimarim, whatever it is, and you use it every day, what's left on the table. So those, and you're going to use it on Pesach, so those should obviously be, checked and cleaned a little bit better. But then you have ones where you kind of like, use as reference, or you use occasionally. So if you could, depending if your kids, I remember when I was younger, so that was a few days activity when school was out, yeshiva was out, and we were home. So that kept us busy for a good couple of hours. So good, if that works, that's great. But if you're going to spend, weeks trying to go through every sefer that you probably never even opened the whole year, God forbid, I'm not saying you don't open the svarim. I'm just saying that particular one wasn't open. So, it might not be the best use of your time. So you make sure the ones that that have chametz, you clean. The other ones, just don't eat by the table, that you're going to have food on during during Pesach, and you wash your hands as well. Keyboards from a computer should probably be vacuumed. It's usually not too difficult to do that. Phones should be clean as well. Toys have a lot of they always get chametz for sure. As much as you think the toy room, you tell them not to bring food there. But if you come after Purim and you notice that the nash bag that used to be a big box is getting smaller and smaller, and you don't know where it's going, it's because it's being eaten in the toy room probably. So you want to make sure the toys that you're going to use, you should clean. Easiest way to do it, depending on the type. Nowadays, a lot of them are electronical, but those that aren't, you take to the bathtub and you just dump them all in the bathtub, soak them with water, clean them as much as you can. Usually that will take care of it. For the ones that you're not, and then you have ones that you just put away. You don't have to clean all of them. You put them away, you sell them. And, a good idea anyways probably is to buy a few new toys if you could afford it. And you kind of make Yom Tif a little bit more exciting. And this way they're busy with those and they don't worry about what they're missing. So that's an option as well. In the bathroom, we'll come back to this, I guess, a little bit later, but you just basically toiletries and things like that. There's plenty of lists that have things that are good for Pesach and not good for Pesach. The chametz, the ingredients that's there, if it is chametz, it is edible for an animal, even though we assume it's not, but really it is. It could just be they're mixed together, so it's hard to separate them. But the chametz itself wasn't made, it's called pagum, ruined. So really, they could be an issue. A lot of them don't have an issue. There's plenty of lists you go through every year, changes, and they're all reliable ones. I'm sure everyone is familiar with what they are. If you have a particular question, then you could ask further. But usually there's plenty of things. Brooms and mops and things like that, you should try to get new ones before Pesach if you could. If not, you got to make sure, especially the broom, everything is clean well. The mop, you could probably, depending on the type, some of them are removable, so you could wash it with hot water. If you could get a new one, it's always better, obviously. But if not, then you got to make sure that it's that it's clean well. Okay, that's basically, again, there's more to talk about, and as we go through, we'll probably bounce back certain things. But moving along to things that you don't have to clean. So first of all, the places that you're going to end up selling. So you go into your kitchen, you have a pantry, half the pantry you're selling. So and you're going to have chametz there and everything, and you're going to cover it over and everything. So those you obviously don't have to clean because you're going to be selling it. And our minhag is we do sell real chametz. There is a little bit of a debate because the selling of the chametz happens Erev Pesach, right? Towards the end of the Zman. This year, actually, it works out better for us. But in general, it's being sold later. And the time for b'dikas chametz is the night before. So the night before, this pantry, let's say, with all the chametz was yours. So technically, you need to have done b'dikas chametz. There's a big machlokes and poskim of how to deal with that, but the Tzemach Tzedek says, and this is the way we paskin, that anything that you're selling, you basically don't have to check. So if you have a pantry that has all this chametz, and you're going to cover it over, you don't have to do b'dikas chametz there, you don't have to check it, you just obviously have to make sure that you seal the whole thing. You put a paper or you write chametz on it with tape or whatever you're going to do, and then it's sold, and that you're good to go with that. If you're not going to use a kitchen because you have a Pesach kitchen, so the same idea, you want to block it off somehow, and you write, but that's it. You don't actually have to, you don't have to actually clean it if you're going to be selling the whole thing. Areas like attics or boiler rooms, depending on the type, if it's an attic that people use for storage and stuff like that. So you got to know your house. If it's a place that chametz comes to occasionally, you got to clean it. If it's I have an attic that other than rats a couple of years ago that spent some time there, thank God they're gone. But other than that, the attic's not used for anything. So those attics, you don't have to clean. Boiler rooms, you don't have to clean. Places that chametz never goes in, excuse me, you don't have to do that. Heavy furniture and appliances that are never moved, bookcases, stuff like that, you don't have to move them to clean behind. And this would include, I guess you could say, heavy appliances as well. So let's say, for example, even a fridge and a stove. If you could, and you could move it and clean behind, great. The only thing you have to remember, first of all, again, is not you have to know sort of where you're holding, because the only time I ever move my fridge is to clean behind there for Erev Pesach, So if you're never going to move it and you never moved it, lav dafka, you have to get behind. But if you do it, it's a good thing if you have the energy to do that. Then the only condition is you have to make sure that you do b'dikas chametz as well. Once you moved it and you clean, you have to do b'dikas chametz there. So it's not a hard process. The way it would work is, let's say you want to clean behind your fridge tomorrow, let's say. So do it towards the evening, or do it whenever you do it, but don't move it back. And as soon as it's dark outside, say sekechavim, which is the time that we do b'dikas chametz, you take a candle, or you can take a flashlight from your phone for this situation, and you just look around the area, and you make sure there's no chametz, and then you move it back. So again, if you do move it, you have to do b'dikas chametz there. So that night, whatever it is, it could be tonight, could be tomorrow night. It doesn't have to be everything done the night of the 14th. You go behind, you look with a candle or flashlight, you do b'dikas chametz there. If it's too hard for you to move, you have no energy, or whatever it is, then you don't have to. You could just clean as far as you can reach. You take a vacuum cleaner as far as you can, or a broom, and the rest of it you're mevatel, you sell to the guy, and then you wouldn't have to worry about the rest. So that's an option as well. What? Is getting rid of chametz or the nullified category? B'dikas chametz is part of getting rid of it. Yeah, it's part of getting rid of it. It's not nullified. Nullifying is a separate thing. Is what you say at the end when you do the kol chami or whatever it is. Yeah. Okay, and the same thing would be in theory, the same thing would be with different, let's say, cheers. Even if you have plastic there and there's a little bit of chametz that somehow deep inside and you can't reach it. So again, it's not nice to look at chametz the whole Pesach, but technically, if you can't reach it and there's no, then you don't have to cut the whole thing open and take it out. Technically, it would be okay. Fine. Now, anything that let's say you're planning on not using or you're closing away, then any book clothing types of things. So really, you don't have to check. You mark it away, and you're good to go with that as well. Candlesticks that you usually have around your tables during all the meals. So you don't have to, kosher them and do those types of things. You just wipe them down. You make sure there's nothing there in between, and that's good enough as well. Okay, so that was the part of cleaning. Now, when it comes to b'dikas chametz, which is part of the same first category. So the night of the 14th, you want to do b'dikas chametz. That means what you're going to do is you want to now make sure that all the cleaning that you did was done right. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to leave the whole b'dikas chametz to the last night. The Alter Rebbe says, l'chatchila, if you want, as you clean your house, you could do b'dikas chametz the night that you're doing cleaning that room. So let's say you're blessed with a very big home. Then you clean the upstairs a week before Pesach, a month before Pesach. Then what you could do is that night you go with a candle. You don't have to use 10 pieces. You go with a candle and you just search over that area and you basically say that there's no chametz here. This place is now kosher for Pesach. One of the things that I came across today that I actually never really thought of until now is that the kitchen, if you're going to do your kitchen a few days before, then you need to do b'dikas chametz the night before you start using it. So let's say, for example, Motzei Shabbos, people are going to turn over their kitchen some, because Shabbos, you're not using your kitchen for 25 hours, 24 hours. So I don't know if we'll get there today, but if we do another share and we talk about doing the koshering, so the best time to do it is when you leave it non-used with hot water for 24 hours. So Motzei Shabbos is a great time to do it. For some people, it's too early if they don't have outdoor areas or other kitchens or other spaces that they can use till then. But for those that will do that, so ideally you clean the whole thing. Whenever you're going to clean it, let's say, you leave it for, your 24 hours that you're going to do. You kosher, you turn over, as they call, the whole kitchen. And then if you're planning on, whenever, really that night, or for sure the night before you're planning on starting to use it for Pesach, you need to do b'dikas chametz. So you take a candle, or we said, basically, at that I would say a candle already, not a flashlight. And you don't have to do 10 pieces, but you take a candle or a flashlight and you go around your kitchen, whenever it is, next Motzei Shabbos, And at night after Tzis Kechavim, you check the whole thing and you say, good, no chametz, the kitchen is not kosher for Pesach. Yeah.
So, like, regular deacons comments then, like Thursday night before, like, before Pesach?
So you always have to do b'dikas chametz the night before, always. The question is, and that's the only time you make a bracha. So you never, if you do now everything else, you don't make a bracha. But how could you cook in a kitchen that's not kosher for Pesach, even though you cleaned it? You could, you're relying on the fact that there's no chametz. It's not a problem per se, but it's not proper. Seemingly, the right thing would be is that you checked it, you cleaned it, you do b'dikas chametz without a bracha, with a candle, and this place is set designated for Pesach. And then the night before Pesach, you definitely have to leave parts of your house that you will do a b'dikas chametz and make a bracha and do 10 pieces and everything like that. So you definitely have to do b'dikas chametz the night before, but it doesn't have to be your whole house. And the kitchen should really be done before. If you're going to be using it for Pesach to cook stuff, then you should really do b'dikas chametz before. So that's something that I never noticed was such an emphasis till this year. I just came across it and I confirmed it. What? Or what? Or a flashlight, you saying? So yeah, no, you're supposed to do it with a candle or a flashlight. It's a ma'akev. The places where it's not ma'akev are places that have a lot of windows that you could open up and you could see inside. But your average kitchen, I think it's you can't check well without a candle or a flashlight. Everyone has a phone, so it's not. I think there may be room to rely on the electricity. Like I have seen people do say that, but it's not going to help you. Like like right here, I can see the difference in how you look at it. Okay.
Candle or a flashlight is that it's a faint light source and you can move it around.
Right.
Move it around close to the floor.
Exactly.
Will be very long.
Right.
The shadows move, you know that there's a piece of dust there causing the shadow.
Interesting.
That's something I noticed.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, also you can get behind tight spots that you wouldn't be able to do if you're relying on a big light. That's true. I guess this question was what happens if someone, you didn't, you just kind of looked it over. So, okay. Anyways, ideally that should be done as well. Okay, so as we said, though, the bracha will only be made the night before. That's the only time you make the bracha. So you definitely have to leave parts of the house for then, for sure. If you were doing it a lot earlier. Okay, then technical things that has to do with ma'ariv or not. So if you daven with a minyan, you could daven with your minyan and shul as usual, and then you check after tzeis. If you're davening at home and you usually daven with a minyan, so then you should daven ma'ariv first, because we're concerned that you might end up forgetting because you usually daven in shul. You're not going to remember when it's so late at night that you didn't daven ma'ariv. So then you should daven ma'ariv first. And in fact, I think the Rebbe writes, I think that the Frierdiker Rebbe did b'dikas in the Kutas Sichos somewhere. Whatever. The Rebbe writes, I think that the Frierdiker Rebbe did b'dikas chametz between mincha and ma'ariv. But elsewhere, the Rebbe does write in a letter that people do that you always do it after ma'ariv. And part of the reason is, he says, because I guess people like to be ma'ariv. Or for sure, we know, like the Alter Rebbe says, he spent the whole night in a one-room house. So because it's going to take a long time, so you basically daven ma'ariv first. So, okay, listen, I mean, I guess it depends on the situation, but yeah, I guess it depends on everyone, how they daven usually. But if you're usually with a shul, you could daven in the shul. If you usually daven at home, so then you could daven after, because you're not going to forget. You always daven at home, so you're not going to forget ma'ariv. So that's you could do that as well. Okay, that we said over there. There are some people who say, we were talking about before about doing a b'dikas chametz in a place that you sell, that you don't have to. There are some people that say that you should really then sell to the guy the day before. So I think there are some rabbanim that started to do that. I think maybe they do 2 sales. They do one before, one after. But they're probably doing it also for people that are traveling. We'll get there. We'll talk about that soon. Okay, so if someone is leaving, okay, we'll leave that for now. If someone is traveling, they're leaving for Pesach. So if you're going within 30 days, so then already it's the Zman of Pesach of b'dikas chametz. So you should really check the night before you go. You could technically use the 10 pieces. It's discouraged, I think, to use the 10 pieces, because what ends up happening on occasion is that someone will do the b'dikas chametz with 10 pieces, and then they'll take it with them to wherever they're going, and then with the intention of burning it the regular time, and then they forget that they have it, and it's inside their suitcase the whole time. So it's not ideal if you're doing it in advance. It's not ideal necessarily to use the 10 pieces. Better to do it without, and you don't have any concerns. In addition to that, if you're going to a place like, let's say, your parents or something like that, so what you should, or whatever, you're going somewhere for the whole Pesach, So what you should do is you should rent the room that you're in. So you give the owner of the house, especially if you're eating by them. If you're eating, if it's your own food, right? So you know you're bringing your own thing. You're just staying by someone, which let's say someone rents a house, and well, that's okay, something else. But you're a guest by someone, but you're bringing your own food. So then you have to do b'dikas chametz. But let's say you're a total guest. That means you're eating by them, you're staying by them. You're totally sort of like you become what's called a ben bayis, like you're part of their house. So then what you need to do is you should really rent the room. So you give them $1, the room becomes yours, and now you could do b'dikas chametz with a bracha that night. So that's the option. Otherwise, what would happen is that the owner would give you the rights to search your own room, but you don't make a bracha. You rely on his bracha. So because you also have sort of like a mitzvah to do b'dikas chametz, so the best thing is if you give him $1, you rent your room, and now you can make your own bracha in your own room when you do the b'dikas chametz over there by the host. Now, from about a half hour or so before the time of b'dikas chametz, so you have to stop doing things that would carry over and distract you. For example, eating, sleeping, and even learning. So you shouldn't really do that a half hour before. If you're learning about the laws of b'dikas chametz, then it's not a problem. If you're learning the laws of if you have a shir and shul, that's a very particular halacha shir, very straightforward. No one gets lost in the Talmudic sphere. So then you can do that as well because it's very defined. You're going to start and end at a certain point, so that's okay. You could add even eating. You could snack a little bit. I mean, we don't have a meal, but if you're hungry, you could have a little bit of a snack or stuff like that. If you do want to learn, then you can ask someone to remind you that when the time comes, so you can learn for the half hour, and they'll remind you that it's time to do the b'dikas chametz. It seems like from the Alter Rebbe, what? It seems like from the Alter Rebbe, and this year I looked at it again and I was a little bit thrown off, so I'm not sure. So I'm going to say this with a grain of salt. But it seems like from the Alter Rebbe that the same way you could remind someone, ask someone to remind you, and you learn, you could also ask them to remind you if you want to eat or do other stuff as well, not sleep. But you could ask someone to remind you, and that could work as well if you want to sit down for supper. You came home late, you're starving, you want to have supper. I think from the Alter Rebbe it was mashma that. I wasn't sure. It was like a kuntas achron, so I have to look at it again. This is what I have from before. Today, when I looked at it, I wasn't 100% sure. So take that as it is. But for sure, learning you could do if you ask someone to remind you. Now, if a person is in a situation or a place where they're not going to be able to do b'dikas chametz anyways, for example, they're traveling home from work and they're stuck on a train or something, so then obviously you can learn and you can eat, you can do whatever you want. You're not home anyway, so it's not really going to make a difference. When you get home, you do it. And the same thing would be if someone wants to go to a hotel or if someone's going to be a guest somewhere. Usually a hotel would be the best, the best example, and you're getting there Erev Pesach. So anytime you get to a place from after the night of the 14th till the end of Pesach, you always have to do b'dikas chametz. So if you go to a hotel in the middle of Pesach, we had this argument a few years ago, Rabbi Levi, but that if you go to a hotel in the middle of Pesach, you do have to do b'dikas chametz when you get into that hotel room. And the same thing would be if you rent a car, by the way. If you rent a car middle of Yom Tif, so you have to do b'dikas chametz in that car if you rent it from a guy. Again, I don't know if you should use a candle. The rental company might not appreciate it, but you should use a flashlight. Now you could use a flashlight in general. We'll talk about soon, I guess, your car also, how that should work in general. It's not yours, but it's your space now. It's your rental, and maybe it is yours. Why not? When they rent you the car, they give you everything that's there. So then, if you remember, I know, but that's not halacha. No, in other words, like this: once something becomes your reshus, there's a chiyuv on you to do b'dikas chametz. What? Maybe we had the same argument last. It was about an Airbnb, if you remember. I don't know if it has to do what you're acquiring. There's a chiyuv on you to do b'dika. There's a chiyuv to do b'dikas chametz from any time from the night of the 14th and on. Should you burn it? If you find chametz inside there, you should get rid of it. I guess. Why not? That's probably actually the only time you burn chametz, by the way, because regular chametz that you find in your house, you sold. And when you did the sale and when you did the bittul, you said any chametz that you know of and any chametz that you didn't find and didn't know of. So all chametz is included. So if you find chametz in your house on Pesach, it might be muktzah during Yom Tov itself, so you have to cover it or whatever, but you don't have to burn it technically. Comes Chalamoid, you could put it into probably the section that you sold already. So it's like things change. When you look reading Shulchan Aruch, it says you have to burn it. That's because it was yours, and it's Aser Ba'ana. Right? It was sold. It was sold. It was sold to the guy. I don't know if you have to burn it after Pesach. It was sold. It's not yours. Oh, if you don't sell the chametz, then it has to be burned. If you didn't sell it, then it has to be burned. Yeah, but I'm saying is that we sell everything, even things that you're not aware of, anything in that, and you're mevatel everything, even things that you didn't find. So bepashtus, you wouldn't have to burn it. Okay, let's go further. Okay. Now, let's say you have, so the way we do it is, some of us may know this already, is we use a feather when we're doing the b'dikas chametz. The reason why we use the feather is probably a pretty simple reason, I think, and there's probably more Kabbalistic things as well, but basically because it was a small broom, essentially. That's the easiest way to scoop up something. So now we have, I guess, better methods of scooping things up. But in those days, that's what it was. The wooden spoon is a little bit different because the wooden spoon is not helpful for the b'dikas chametz. You're trying to, it's like the kid who's trying to help you and they can't get it on. So they end up picking it up, putting it on the spoon, holding the spoon, and putting it in the bag with their hands. So the spoon is there. It has to do with, we use a wooden spoon particularly because it has to do with we want it to help the burning. And I think I saw today something that was compared to something that was Linus line, I think something that was kachin that was left overnight. I think that was compared to that over there. The halacha is you're supposed to throw in like a toothpick, a kesem or something to help it burn. So we do something similar. We have wood, but either way, the point is that we use a feather to scoop up the chametz, and we use a spoon, a wooden spoon that's going to be there as well that will get burnt. And then I guess we'll go a little bit out of order, but the way we do it is you'll use it in a paper bag. You'll tie the paper bag, keep the handle of the spoon poking out. And this way, and that's how we burn it. I guess the Eitz Tova, it's a little bit out of order here, but I guess the Eitz Tova would be that when you use their 10 pieces, you should not put it in silver foil because silver foil doesn't burn well. So you should do it in some sort of paper, tissue, or something like that. Just make sure that it's sealed well. I guess along the same lines as you should use, if possible, like a pita or something like that. That's not going to be so crummy. Otherwise, you might get crumbs everywhere. And I guess once we're talking about this already, so another thing would be also is that each piece should really be less than a kazayas on their own. Right? Because if it's a kazayas, then if it gets lost and you don't find it, you're going to have a real big issue. But if each piece is less than a kazayas and you can't find it after, you open up your bag and you only have 9 pieces of chametz. So if you know that each one was less than a kazayas, then you don't have to tear your whole house apart again. But altogether, it should be a kazayas because when you burn it the next day, you want to have a proper shear for beer. You want to destroy it in the right way. So again, altogether, it should be a kazayas, which a kazayas is probably the size of I would say it's what do you call it? A slice of bread is usually a kazayas altogether. Two pieces is usually a kabeya. So it's usually about 1 slice of bread. So that you should use that for all 10, but each one should be obviously less than that on its own, and it shouldn't be too crummy. The b'dikas chametz that you're doing is a real b'dikas chametz, meaning you're not cleaning for Pesach. That you already did. But what you're doing is you're really making sure there's nothing there. So if you go around and you find 10 pieces, don't close up shop and put your bag away and close up. You have to make sure you look through your whole house, or at least the rooms that you didn't do yet till now. Like we said, you could do some before. So if you're doing b'dikas chametz and you find 10 in one room, your kids put it all in one place, you got to continue looking. That was just one room. You still have to go through the rest of your house. The candle, everything should be lit before you start. So when you make the bracha, you could go straight into there. You don't want to make, I guess you could say, a hefsek. So by the same token, if anyone is listening to the bracha and then they're going, let's say you have a big house, you have a bunch of kids. So you tell your kids, ideally they should be bar mitzvah boys age, but you could use others as well. So ideally they should all be gathered around when you make the bracha, and then from there they should all sort of spread out. But everyone should do a little bit, at least for a second or two, of searching in their area before they move away. So they shouldn't hear the bracha and then walk across the house to start doing b'dikas chametz. So someone will make a bracha, let's say in the dining room, living room. Everyone should look a little bit around them. So this way the bracha was sort of, established right away. And then after a minute, after a few seconds, whatever, they can go to their room or whatever it is that was designated for them to do b'dikas chametz. Yeah.
They all all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you all light from the same candle, or is it just like they all light on your own?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, they could all have their own separate thing. That doesn't matter. Okay, what else? Okay, there are some people that like to they wash nagavasar, I think, before they wash some sort of their hands before they do b'dikas chametz. Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch. I don't know that's a minig, but people do that. Okay. After you're going to make, before you make the bracha is al bir chametz. You're making a bracha on the destruction of the chametz. Because as we said before, this is part 1 of the destruction that you're going to do the next day, which is through burning it. So when you make the bracha, you should have in mind that number 1, you're going to do a bittul right after you check. You're going to say the statement of kol chamira, and the next day as well, and you're going to do the burning the next day as well. So you should have those all in mind in the bracha when you do that. When you make the bracha, you shouldn't really make a hefsek till you start. Right? Even throughout the whole searching, it's better if you don't. But if you did, it would be okay. But if you made a hefsek between the bracha and from when you started to check, so that would be a big issue. If it was a necessary one, like for example, the candle went out. You make a bracha and the candle blew out. So you tell someone, could you bring me a lighter? So then, again, ideally you shouldn't, but if you did, you don't have to make another bracha because that's something that's necessary for the bdika. But on the other hand, if you could, get away with it. But if you spoke about you made the bracha, then you turn around and you joke and you say, what's the part of the score of the baseball? I don't know, whatever. But then you actually have to make another bracha because you made a hefsek before you started checking. If you have a lot of places, let's say you did the bdikas chametz and then like let's say you forgot about a room and then you remember, oh, I forgot to do the store, I forgot to do the car, I forgot to do the garage, I don't know, whatever. So you don't have to make another bracha. You just go and you check the same, and you check that as well. If you're blessed with a few homes to check or a few different locations, going from one to the other, the Alter Rebbe says is not a hefsek. So you make a bracha before you start on your first location, and then you continue to the next locations, and you don't have to make another bracha there as well. When you make the bracha, have in mind that you're going to go to all of these, the rest of your places as well. Now, okay, we do put out 10 pieces, but technically, if you didn't or if you don't find it, it's not a bracha levatala. It's the mitzvah is to search for chametz, and if you find it, to destroy it. We happen to put out 10 pieces. Part of it is al pi Arizal, al pi Kabbalah, different things. But technically, and also some would say because really you already cleaned before, so just to make sure that you find something to burn, you put it out. But if you don't find anything, it's fine. So the bracha is not connected to necessarily those 10 pieces. Anyone could put out the 10 pieces, but if you're going to use someone else, specifically kids, and even for yourself, it's a wonderful idea to write down the places. Today's day and age, they actually have different apps where you could do like check things, where it can mark it off. So this way you know which ones you found and which ones you still have to find. Now it takes away from a little bit of the excitement when you know where it is. But if you have little kids, it's better that you know exactly where it is because otherwise you're going to end up not finding them. So it should be written down where they are. That's the best way to do it. It shouldn't be in too difficult of a place that you're going to end up having to get crumbs everywhere while you're trying to schlep it out, because that's not going to be great either. We said the silver foil, we spoke about that already. Okay. We spoke about that as well. Okay, so again, as I said, if you're leaving town early, so you're going to do bdikas chametz in your house before you leave, you don't have to use the 10 pieces, and it's probably a good idea not to because you might end up forgetting it, as we mentioned before. And the same thing would be if, let's say, you're doing a bdikas chametz in your kitchen because you're going to start cooking the next day. The same thing. You don't have to use the 10 pieces. You do have to use a candle or a light, but you don't have to hide 10 pieces there those nights before. You could have, someone, you do part of your bdikas chametz yourself, and then you could ask someone to be your shliach to do other parts of it or the rest, and it doesn't take away from the mitzvah. It's fine according to Alter Rebbe. It's not going to be an issue. I think the Rebbe writes about that as well. Anyone, technically, we said, could be a shliach for this. Even kids that are the age of chinuch. The age of chinuch, depending on their maturity, is usually between 6 and 9, maybe 7 and 9. So anyone could technically do the bdikas chametz. I guess in theory, someone who's an adult, a man over the age of 13, like we mentioned before, would be better. But it has to be a person who has, a Jewish person who has the responsibility of bdikas chametz as well. Oh, so that's what I got to right now. So now we use a candle. The candle that we use is so a few things. Firstly, you have to use a candle. So even though you cleaned it before and you checked it before, obviously, because no one's cleaning dafka when they do bdikas chametz, but you do use a candle, so you have to do it at night anyway. So you do it at night with a candle. Again, if you missed the night of and now it's the next morning, so then you do obviously the next morning by day and you make a bracha there and whatever. You don't have to shut the lights. Some people say it's actually better not to. What I've seen, they say that the Rebbe did it with the lights on. That's what they claim, a candle and the lights on. There is an idea of preference to use beeswax candles. I don't know that it's how strong it is. Alter Rebbe does say if you don't have beeswax, you could use different types of fats or oils. Which one's better, which one's worse. So he says then it used to be either chaylev or shuman. Chaylev and shuman are both fats, but chaylev is not kosher and shuman is kosher. So the Alter Rebbe says better shuman, because shuman, if it's kosher, so the only thing you're worried about is milchiks. But if it's treif, then you're worried that it's going to drip anywhere, so you're not going to check well. So nowadays we have if you're not using beeswax candle, then most of these candles are great. A flashlight with a focus light is fine to use. In fact, in certain places it should be used. In your car, a lot of people would say you should dafka not use a candle. You should use a flashlight on their beds. I remember a terrible story when I was a little kid of a family that I think a few kids, they passed away in a fire that started the night of bdikas chametz, let's just say. So it's definitely ideal for certain areas to to not put the candle. First of all, it's dangerous, and number two, because it's dangerous, is you're not really going to do a proper bdikas chametz because you're going to end up being careful about how close you're getting to to be careful that you don't want to start a fire. So it's not it's gonna be whatever, it's gonna ruin itself just because you're gonna be so so careful. So better use a flashlight for those areas. Okay. We spoke about where to do this. We spoke about if you have kids, then you definitely have to check. It used to be the bathroom, I think, was a place that they wouldn't really check for chametz. But once you have kids that are going all over town, so then you definitely want to make sure. If you're going to be eating in a particular place of chametz, let's say, the night of, you're going to do bdikas chametz, and then the next day you're eating in a specific area. So you don't really have to do bdikas chametz in that area that night. What are you doing bdikas chametz for? There's literally chametz there, and you're going to be using it. So what's the bdika? What are you accomplishing? So what you should do is put all the chametz in one small, protected area or a very designated area. And then the next day, after you finish eating and you're ready to put everything away before this man, so then you go. I don't think you have to use a candle. I mean, especially if it's outside, you definitely don't have to use 10 pieces, and you don't make a bracha, but you just kind of like visually, wherever the area was, you seal everything away, put away all the chametz, and then you look it over. You look it over that way. And just make sure that it's clean and there's no chametz there. So that's what you should do. To do the bdikas chametz the night before doesn't make any sense because there's chametz there. You're planning on using it still, so it's not really going to help you. Okay, it's a little bit out of order. I guess we're going back a bit, but okay. Well, we kind of did that already. But again, anywhere where chametz might be, if kids couldn't get into certain nooks and crannies, so you might not crawl on all four, but if your kids do, then it's a good thing to check into places that might be on that level. If it's higher than that, then you don't have to do that. Okay, the bdikas chametz is just to make sure that there's no chametz there because you already checked and everything like that. Now, I guess this doesn't apply to us, maybe some of our kids. If you have kids in yeshiva that are leaving their yeshiva within 30 days, so they should check their room the night before they leave, because even though it's a shared space, but they do have some rights to it. So they should check it over before they leave if they're going to be there for Pesach, and then they check the night before with the bracha. But if they're not, then they just do it the night before they leave. And again, they don't have to do it 10 pieces, as I said, even though in the past I was always bouncing back and forth, but I think it's a better idea not to, because they're going to end up, who knows, forgetting it, losing it, leaving it on their bed, or taking it with them and leaving it in their suitcase. So better not to do with pieces, but they should use a flashlight or a candle if they have, and just go over their room to make sure everything is there, even though they're going to be selling it also, by the way. Like we said, you have a few different prongs that you do this. They don't make a bracha because it's too early. So no bracha, but they should check before they leave, just visually before they leave, just like, So spoon and feather, I don't think they need. That's all, because they're not going to really be doing 10 pieces and taking away chametz. They're going to be selling it anyways, but just visually with a candle or a thing just to go through it. It's more of a, because you're within 30 days, you have the chiyuv to do b'dikas chametz. Even though I said nowadays we're going to end up selling it anyways, but still it seems to be that's what we do for that area. Even though in your house we said, according to the Tzemach Tzedek, you didn't have to, but okay, but this is because they're not going to have another space to do it. In your house, you're checking anyways your whole house, so therefore a place that you're selling, we won't be as concerned about. Okay, we said this already. Okay, I think if you come after this man, if you come Arab, okay, we're not going to go back there. We already spoke about this. Okay. The best way to do the car apparently is you vacuum it, you do everything, obviously. And some people would say is that, you know what, just when you clean it by day, open up the doors and the windows and do b'dikas chametz that way. Some would say that's the best way. Again, others would say you could do it with a flashlight at night as well. A candle, I highly doubt, would be great because you're going to be worried about it dripping, and you're going to be worried about fires. So either you do it by day after you clean it well. If it's still light outside, then you can do it that way. Or you could do it the night, any night that you have with a flashlight, you could do the same thing. Clothing, you kind of, the Alter Rebbe does say that we don't really keep foods in our clothing anymore. We have bags. They didn't used to have bags, but kids' pockets for sure should be clean. The Alter Rebbe says even our own pockets, it's tavi la bracha, if you could, that you should check them as well. So you should do that. Backpacks, of the kids, you should definitely check. Again, you're going to be putting it away and selling, so it's not the biggest deal. As long as it's locked away somewhere. But if it's going to be somewhere where you're not selling, sometimes you leave it in the coat closet. You're not selling your coat closet. So in that case, it is a good thing, especially it's good for chinuch. Also, the kids should go through it and make sure that there's nothing there. The best way to do it in that case, nowadays we have flashlights. So the truth is you could do it that way. But the best way is probably to do it during the day outside in the sunlight. They clean it out and they just look it over. And that could work for the B'dikas Chametz as well. Svarim we spoke about. Okay, the fridge, we spoke about, okay, let's do something else. Let's do with cleaning. The shul is supposed to be checked. So that might not be on you. But what is on you is if you have lockers here, so you should check the lockers, make sure there's nothing there, because that kind of is your reshus. And also if you have a talis bag, especially one that you use for Shabbos, so look through it. Maybe this week or maybe next week is better, whatever it is, because sometimes candies get in there or the kids come and they put stuff there. So that's another area that you should make sure, and especially it's not on your house. Sometimes it slips your mind. So if you have a separate talis bag, to make sure to look through that as well. Okay, we spoke about the courtyards as well and things like that. Okay, so that takes care of number one. The next thing that we do, as we said before, what would be called bittul. So the bittul means that you basically take your reshus off of it and you say that all this chametz doesn't belong to me anymore. And the first time we do that is the night of the b'dikas chametz. That's really the main one, actually. Even though you have more that you have to do the next day because you're still leaving over chametz. But this one is the main one because everyone is together, everyone is here, everyone just checked for chametz. So the main bittul that you do is really the night that you do b'dikas chametz. That's the best one. You have to know what you're saying. It's not a tefillah. It's not a prayer. You have to know the translation of what you're saying. You're supposed to mean it. So ideally, what you should do is either read it in English if you don't understand the Aramaic, or what you could do is read it in your mind in the English first, so you know the translation, and then you read it in Aramaic, and when you actually verbalize the words, you already know what it is. But to read it first without knowing what you're saying, and then look at the translation as you're doing it is not ideal. You should know what you're saying before you say it, so that when you say it, you actually mean it. Okay, so that's something you have to remember. Now, the next morning, you're going to do the same bittul again. This year, it's a little bit different. We'll do it on Shabbos. I don't know if we'll get to it today. Maybe we'll do another share that's going to be more focused on this year's Kviya. So we'll have to do another share a little closer too. Maybe next week, we'll see. But the point is that you're going to do another bittul the next day as well. And this year, like I said, you're going to end up doing that Shabbos morning. Now, so the one that you're going to do Shabbat, the one that you're going to do the day, okay, the one that you do by day, you kind of do after everything is burned. So in other words, when you go to burn the chametz, right? So you, again, this year it's not going to be applying because we'll do the Yehiratzin. The Rebbe said the Yehiratzin in Tafshin Mem, was it Mem Zayin, I think it was. So the Rebbe said the Hiratzin on Friday, but the bittul they didn't do. The bittul was the next day. So the bittul you do the next day. But in general, when you do the bittul, again, it's not so applicable this year, but you want to make sure that you do it after everything is burnt. Because if you throw it in and right away you do the bittul, then you weren't makayim the mitzvah of beer chametz, because it already wasn't yours. So you should wait till it's fully burnt. For the same reason, people don't like throwing a flame accelerant, like something to make the fire bigger. So they don't like doing that either while it's burning. Because imagine you put chametz there, then you spray it with this toxic thing. You destroyed it, not with fire. You destroyed it with the spray. So you want to make sure that it gets destroyed with fire. That's the ideal way to do it. So these are just, I guess, things to keep in mind. Okay, I don't know. This is a little bit out of order, but I guess somehow, someone told me, for example, they have a guest coming to their house, and they weren't kashering the house. This guest was going to be, I guess, eating and doing everything somewhere else, just sleeping there. So in that case, it's like anything else. I guess that's not if someone goes to an Airbnb, that's not kosher. So you could use certain things for cold. You could use the sink for cold, things like that. And basic stuff. Some would say maybe to remove the hot water faucet, so the guy doesn't by mistake use it. Okay, I don't know, that may be too much. But the point is that some would say maybe to put a towel over it. But ideally, again, you can use it for certain basic things. If someone's renting the house, if it wasn't koshered, so you could use it for like cold stuff and things like that. After the b'dikas chametz, you have to be very careful with all the chametz that you have. It shouldn't get lost. You should remember to destroy it the next day. Again, if you properly put it away, and then you come the next day and something's missing, you don't have to search your whole house again. First of all, let's say the pieces of chametz we mentioned are each going to be less than a kazayis. But if you did what you were supposed to, that means it wasn't left on the table. It was left in a proper place, and you could assume that if it's missing or something was moved, someone moved it and probably destroyed it. So in other words, if it's out of reach of the kids and it's marked off in a very particular, nowadays it has a look. It's a plastic, a paper bag with the spoon sticking out in a feather, So if it gets moved, then you could assume that whoever moved it took care of it. So again, you do want to make sure that the Shulchan Aruch said that you're hanging it from a string. So I don't know if you're going to hang it these days, but you definitely want to make sure that it's properly placed somewhere. And this way, you don't have to be concerned, even if it's not there, or if you're missing part, you could assume someone took it and did something like that. Okay, again, like we mentioned before, if on Yom Tov itself, you shouldn't destroy it necessarily because it was sold. So it is muktzah, so you cover it over. And if the kids are around and you're afraid that if you cover it over, they're going to end up opening it up and eating from it, even though it doesn't belong to you. So then what you should do is they should you should move it with a shinoi. So maybe if you know something is especially this year Shabbos, on Shabbos you find some sort of chametz and it's before Yom Tov. So do it, take it with backhand or something. You can move it, and I think you could even move it to the place that was sold. The place that was sold that was closed away, if you can get it in there, if I'm not mistaken, you can do that as well. And you don't have to, again, you don't have to destroy it because it was already sold. Okay, so a few things to keep in mind in general about chametz before, yeah. So first of all, for people that have pets, a lot of people ask about birds or fish or things like that. So if you have birds or fish, then you're not allowed to have anah from chametz. That means you can't feed them chametz food either. So some of them are chametz food. You have to know that. So one option is you really have to sell the animal and the food to the guy, and this way the guy will feed will feed the animal. Now it can't be that the animal's in your house and the food is in your house and it's sold to the guy and you're feeding it. I'm not sure how that would work exactly. Um, maybe you could if the animal doesn't really belong to you. I'm not sure if you're handling it. I don't know. Ideally, it should, if it could be sold and given to the guy. So I don't know how you would do that. But there are other options. Some people say they have, the slow feeders where it could take a lot, like a fish tank where you put something there and it just feeds it slowly. Or so then you sell the whole thing like the rest of your chametz, and then it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the guy. So if it's slow feeding while it's there, then that shouldn't be a problem. What? No, that's what I'm saying. So the slow feeding you set up from before. It's set up once, and then you're not giving it on Yom Tov itself. To give it, that's what I'm saying. To give it on Yom Tov itself, I'm not sure how you can get away with that. But if you have a fish tank that was sold to the guy, and you have a thing that's a little tablet you put in or something like that. It's a slow release. So I imagine it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the guy. I think it's fine. Another thing also is when you go to the zoo, you have to be careful. Sometimes you buy stuff to feed to the animals. That could be chametz gomer. It could be kitnius. So kitnius, maybe you could have enough from at least. But if it's chametz gomer, which is possible, then you can't feed it to goyim. So you can't feed it to the animal. So in your mind, the animal's not yours, the food's not yours, but it is. If you buy it with a quarter or 50 cents, I think that went up already, maybe 75 cents, then it's yours. And then you're holding it and you're feeding it to the animal. So you're not allowed to do that. Okay, it's a little bit out of order. I'm not sure how I have this all set up, but rings. So what women should do with their rings is really, I guess men too, but mainly women because men are not so as involved in the chametz like preparation and stuff. But they shouldn't wear it for 24 hours if possible, so they know that it's not whatever, or at least they shouldn't use it with hot. So let's say it's over Shabbos, that might work unless they're having hot soup. But ideally, it may be better not to wear it at all, and then they just dump it into boiling water. Usually that's not a problem if they're concerned that it's going to get ruined or something. So maybe you could send it to a jeweler that will get into it. But over there, the issue is with the rings that if they wear it while they're food prepping and there maybe was chametz sort of there, then it can get into the Pesach food also. So you have to be careful. Obviously, strollers, diaper bags, purses, toys, vacuum, all that stuff, the car, the trunk, all that stuff we already mentioned, have to be cleaned, especially if you're going to be using them. Um, I guess this is another side point, but I remember I was in someone's house once years ago, and they wanted to use the silver foil that they were using the whole year. They were going to just keep for Pesach. It was like one of these big Costco size ones. So I said, I think really should get a new one. It's like you never know what was in there. Your hands. No, it's in its own separate thing, and it never gets used. And then before Pesach, thank God, somehow it fell out of like wherever this place where it was, and as it falls, a piece of a pretzel came falling out, or two pretzels. So I think they got a new one after that. But the point is that that a lot of times we think that things are okay, but you should try to make sure that all of these things, if possible, that you don't come to any issues. Different cosmetics and creams and stuff like that. Every year they put out different lists. So go to your local reliable list and look it over to make sure it's not necessarily not achilas kelev. Sometimes it is edible. It's just you're not going to eat it, but medicine, obviously, you have to, that's already a whole separate thing. We'll get to that in a second. If you have temporary fillings with the dentist, temporary ones ideally should be put in more than 30 days before. So this way it becomes, a little bit permanent and it's not within 30 days. Obviously, if you have someone has an issue and they're in pain and whatever it is, and they need to get a temporary one before they get a root canal. So it is what it is, especially if it's made out of like a metal type, then that could work as well. But ideally, if you could. Usually, okay, things that are not real chametz that you have around, you could possibly leave them in your fridge, meaning you have things that are not certified. They're not chametz, they're just not certified necessarily. So those, if you wrap them in a bag, you could possibly put it in a fridge. But real chametz, it's not so simple. You could leave it in your fridge. You're supposed to have like a mechitza, like blocking it off somehow. I did see where some people wrote that if you make like a box, so you kind of cover it over, it's on a shelf and you cover it with like on all sides of the box. So I did see that that can work if it's a solid one. So that's possible as well. Okay, so some medicines and any life-threatening situation. Obviously, you okay, we'll do a little bit more. We'll stop by Shabbos Erev Pesach, so we'll just do another 5 minutes or so. Medicines for life-threatening situations, obviously, you got to take. If there's an option that the doctor says there's something that's equally as good that I can give you, that's not a problem with chametz, then fine. But if there's any concern of chametz, but it's a heart thing or something like that, then obviously you take it and you don't have any concern. If it does have an issue with chametz, some of them do. So then you keep them separate and you'll do it that way. But it is something obviously that you have to do. If you can find one that's alternative, that's a good one, which now again, they have all these lists that come out with different medicines. If you find one that you could easily replace it with, that doesn't no difference. So that would be good as well. Kitnius you could use for someone that's ill or for a child. So this is always something that comes up for babies with formula. If you're gonna have kitnius and that's what they're used to, and you want to try something new, it might not work well. So that's number one. So if you do want to try one, they do sell kosher Pesach, good. So if you get it in time and you try it and the kid takes it, wonderful. The kid only likes the kitnius one, then it's fine. You can give it to the kid. Just keep separate stuff. That means wash the dishes in the bathroom and have separate. It shouldn't be around. But the kid is totally allowed to have kitnius. And if someone is ill and they're sick and they have some sort of medicine that's kitnius, also not a problem. These are things that you can do. Now, if someone has medicine, let's say, they're not necessarily deathly ill, but it is something that they need. So then there's different styles, I guess you could say. Ones that you're gonna sort of like pills that don't really taste good, that you kind of just knock back. Those would probably be the best ones. Ones that are like chewable and candy flavored and the drinks. So those would be a lot stricter because those already, you're kind of like enjoying them to some degree. So you have to be a little bit more careful. Vitamins are a lot more strict as well because they're not as necessary. So you do have to, not that they're not a good thing, but they're not like, they're not going to impact you the same way. Many people will say, if you speak to doctors like about different types of vitamins or things like that, and they'll say, if you miss a couple of days, like it's okay, it's not the biggest deal. So if someone's on a strict regimen, find out if a lot of them they have alternatives that are good, and if you can't find an alternative that's good, it's possible. Again, not medicine you got to be more careful about, but for things that are not medicine, you could possibly skip it. It might be ideal to do that. Eye drops, ear drops, suppositories, those types of things, you don't usually have to look into them. They're usually fine. If you do know that there's a version that they say is kosher, so obviously that would be good as well. Okay, if a kid does need medicine, that's another level, and the only one you have is chametz. So Shulchan Aruch mentions that maybe a goy could give it to him or something like that. Okay, if anyone has that situation, that's something you could talk to a Rav to figure out the best way how to go about it. Let's finish with this last thing, which is the third section that we do, which is that we sell the chametz. That's the last thing that we do. So someone asked me before about their kids in school or stuff like that. So ideally, kids should give their parents a point. Their father should sell it for them. So the father should tell the kid, "I'm going to go sell your chametz," or something along those lines, and that would be fine. Verbally is enough. They don't actually have to write it down or anything like that. The Rav is a shliach. The Rav is not. You're not selling it to the Rav. You're appointing the Rav as your agent to be the one who's going to sell it to the guy. That's the way you're doing it. There's different minhagim of how they used to do it. Some people would do it with a kinyan sudar, with a handkerchief, that you kind of make it like more established that you're appointing the Rav to do this for you. So that's a good thing. Ideally, you should know before you go to the Rav, you should have a list in your mind of the different locations that you want to sell, so it keeps it easier. People also used to give a key. So this way, if the non-Jew ever wants to come in the middle of Pesach and actually go into your house, and I remember even when I was growing up, which I guess is more years ago than I like to admit. So, but we used to go with the key to the Rav on Kingston Avenue, Rabbi Marlow, Rabbi Azdabo, wherever it was at different times, and we'd give him a key, and it was a thing, and it was a normal thing to do. Nowadays, it looks like less and less are doing it with the key, but technically, if the guy would come to your house and knock on your door and say, "I'd like to take my my mashka," you need to let them in. If they can't get in and you're not going to let them in, then that means that the sale wasn't a real sale, and it's a real sale. Legally, it's an actual real sale. Now, the thing is that if they do go and they take your stuff, then they have to pay you for it. So it's not the biggest deal, right? Meaning, that's the condition. They're buying it. They're not getting it's not $5 for 6 million Jews chametz. They're giving a down payment, and if they actually want it after Pesach, they actually have to pay. So if they take your Glenlivet 75, whatever, however many years it is, then it's fine. They'll have to buy you one, and meaning they have to pay for it. So it's not the biggest deal, but in terms of how we think, it's a legitimate sale, and if they want to come in, they have to be able to come in to get it. And so nowadays, again, people don't always give a key anymore, but just to show you like that how that would work. If someone's traveling, so if you're going east, that means you're going to New York or you're going to Eretz Yisrael or Europe or something. So you should really sell it where you are. If you're going to be in the east, you should sell it where you're going, because the for you the time of the Isser will start first, and the Rav, you want to make sure that he's selling it, that in the place that you are, it's already sold when the Isser of Chametz is on you. So that's if you're going there, you should sell it. Now you don't have to worry about when Yom is over that he's going to sell it back too early, because like you guys mentioned before, you're not going to be makabel it back unless you want it. So you're not going to be makabel it back, but you should sell it really over there where you are. The other way around, meaning if someone from Eretz Yisrael is coming here, so some would say that they should do the opposite. You should sell it also in Eretz Yisrael, because that's where your chametz is. So that's idea, that would be the best way to do it. Sell it over there where your chametz is, and this way you could it'll cover for all opinions basically. Okay, we'll do that for now. You could walk past. Let's say you sell in your house a pantry or a certain area. You could technically walk past that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the actual sale, there's a condition that says that if someone needs to go inside occasionally to get, like, let's say you sell half of it as chametz and the other half isn't chametz, but it was a room that you sold. So I believe inside the actual contract, it says that if they need to use it for something, they can go in. So it's usually not a problem, but you shouldn't be going in consistently. It's sort of not your room in some way. But there is that right is put into the contract that you do have a rite of passage if you need to go in there. So that's something you could do. Now, if there are people that are not from, you should still try to get them to sell their chametz. The Rebbe spoke about that many times, that there's a lot of benefits to get non-from people to sell the chametz, even though whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But you do your part, and that is what it is. The room is not sold, the chametz is sold generally. Meaning that if someone will say, oh, you know what, I'm in someone's house and I forgot I have a Danish, I don't know, whatever, and I forgot to sell it, let me put it in the room that was sold. It's not going to help anyone. It's still yours and it's still chametz, and chas v'shalom, a person would still be over bayiro bayimatzeh. So why? Because the chametz is sold. So that's what has to be sold. Well, I'm saying you say if it's a yid on Pesach. On Pesach. I'm saying on Pesach, yeah. But you could get, you have, if you didn't sell it yourself, if you already sold all your chametz, so then it's okay. You could put it somewhere, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about where a guy didn't sell his chametz. So let's say it was a bacher or something, that didn't, wherever you go, you're going to sell your chametz. So, and you're going to, in the lashon, you're going to say wherever it is. So you'll be covered. But for someone that's not selling their chametz, they may have that issue. And that's why, by the way, imagine a person realizes after Yom Tov starts that there's somewhere where they forgot to sell the chametz. Let's say someone realizes they forgot to sell a particular thing. So then it comes after Yom Tov. It's okay. It's not chametz shavar Pesach, because really it was all included in the sale. You included everything, whether you knew of it or you didn't know of it, if it was in your possession. So like we said before, so if you find it after Yom Tov, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot to sell this, whatever. So it's fine. It's not. It will be okay to use. Don't rely on this ever, obviously, but if a person, chas v'shalom, forgot to sell their chametz 1 year, but you're a regular by, let's say, Rabbi Levertov here, which is why, by the way, it's a good idea to always have a consistent same place where you're selling it. So then it's included in the sale anyway. So in other words, the way the Rav writes it is basically that even those that forgot to come this time, it's included as well. So don't rely on that, obviously, because I don't know if it works 2 years in a row. I'm not sure. But for sure, the first year, if God forbid someone forgot to sell, it's like you don't have to throw everything away. You could talk to your Rav if you want after, but bepashtus was included in the sale, and therefore you could use the chametz after Pesach as well. Okay, I think we'll call this. We'll stop for now. We do have a whole nother section for this year because it's Shabbos and Pesach, but I think we'll save that for next time. I guess. Yeah. What? Yeah. So a little further, we could do another 10 minutes. We do another 10 minutes. What?
Up to you. Your choice.
All right, it looks like most are leaving, so we'll do another one next week. We'll do it on Zoom and record it, so if anyone needs, we'll be able to send it to them as well. Maybe we'll do it earlier. Maybe I'll do a separate one online. Okay, whatever. We'll see. All right, shkoyach for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.